It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Thursday, July 13th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have a Provi in the Media Part 2, the QNA word study, which is QNA Thursday, and of course, commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? How was your service last night? Hope you guys really enjoyed it, received a lot of grace and fire. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment below to build our community. Really happy for everyone joining us every week down the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up and support each other each and every day. This week's Sunday message: don't think about other things. You just need to fulfill the will. It is Thursday, and of course, you guys know I really love Thursdays because we're right upon the weekend, and I'm so happy. Weekend, one day away. Right? And for me, I'm just like, man, what do I need to do? I need a haircut. My hair's getting quite wildly, or I don't know what the right word, spruce. Because especially I have short and coarse hair. So you know what? I cut my hair short, but when it grows out. It doesn't grow down and straight. It grows outward. So kind of like a bushman right now. But yeah, I'm super excited for the weekend. I told you guys before, beach barbecue party. Yes, it's something that I haven't done in a long time. Actually, I haven't been even to the beach in a long time too either. So I think I need to buy some sunscreen. But does it sound so cool? Like when you hear beach barbecue party, it sounds cool, doesn't it? So I am excited. I can't wait to go. Actually, when you hear the word beach barbecue party, doesn't it kind of sound like something everyone would like to go to? Like if honestly right now, if we were in the same city, and I said, I announced on the podcast, hey guys, if you're in this city, come to a beach barbecue. I think it's something that everyone would like to go to. And I think beach barbecue sounds really fun, really relaxing, just hanging out until the sun sets. And for myself, because it's going to be in an area I don't usually go to, I'm going to go extra early and chill at a cafe and see how good the coffee around that area is too. So it's going to be a great Saturday for me. What about you guys? What do you guys have planned for the weekend? Yes, I know it's only Thursday, but what do you guys have planned for this weekend? For me, I'm starting to think, a lot of times people are asking me, where does my content come from? Because I have to talk, 5 days a week. And, one thing that people don't really, well, of course, people recognize by now is I like to talk. And I talk a lot. But of course, the content and the subjects are sometimes things that are not easy to figure out. But one of the things I'll tell you right now is one of the things that either motivates me or gives me topics is your comments. I've been talking about the comments all week this week. I'm going to talk more about it today, especially because we have some questions for Q&A Thursday. But I think it's something that I'm a talker. Weirdly enough, let me think about this. I do talk a lot. However, because there's times I want to be really silent too. But not a lot. Most of the time I like to talk. So if you like talking and you meet with me, we're going to be talking for hours and hours and hours. But either way, the reason I said this is because I got another super awesome comment. Really, this is an encouraging comment. It says, hey, Peace Guy, you're young at heart, and that's why you get pimples, so embrace it. So I was like, oh, okay, thank you so much. And then basically this person said, I want to say thanks to your Patreon. Thanks for reminding me to check your Patreon on history. I let my mom listen to it since she is a newcomer, and many of her questions were answered. She aspires to be like you when she evangelizes and preaches the new word. And I'm just like, whoa! I was so thankful to God that a lot of the material, even in Patreon, remember in Patreon, there's still lecture training in there. If you search for LT, you're going to see all the stuff coming out for lecture training. That's what LT is, lecture training. And then on top of it, there's going to be newcomer Bible studies, like NC Bible study. You're going to find newcomer Bible studies there if you search for that. And if you're looking for a specific lesson, you just put the lesson in there, like history. Just click search for history. You'll find the lessons in there. I'm hoping Patreon in the future finds a way to make things more organized, because I think that will help a lot for people who want to look back at other episodes and stuff like that too. Either way. So I did put up a new poll a little bit late this week, but I put a new poll. But my question is, at this moment in time, do you care more about yourself, others, or equal? Right? And it was partly because it's something that I was thinking about recently. And, this is the interesting part. 96% of the people voted either myself or equal, which is quite interesting. 49% are focused on their self, and 47% says it's equal between them and other people. And that's 96% voting in just those two areas, which is really, really interesting. But I put that poll up because of the recent conversations on male evangelism. Someone wrote that they would rather evangelize for the future generations, and they are okay if there's nothing for them. They don't get married. They're fine with that. There's people like that thinking about others and not more for themselves. And I was thinking to myself, I thought to myself too, is what about me right now at this time? And I wonder what others were thinking about in their life right now, right? So this is kind of the big question is, every moment in time, we're going to be thinking differently. At other moments in time, we'll think a lot more about others, right? Let's just pretend you're evangelizing your parents. Yeah, at that time, you're probably going to be way more focused on your parents than you are yourself. Some people, even right now at a very, very difficult time, just this moment in time, there's some people who just really want to focus on themselves, making sure that they survive this moment right now too. So I thought it was a pretty interesting question. And that's why the caveat I put in there in detail, I said, at this moment right now, what are you thinking more about? Right? So it's not like saying that, oh, you're such a selfish person. It's just a certain moment in time that what are we thinking about at this moment? And really thankful a lot of you guys out there that are going into the polls too right now too. There is something that I was really thinking about. Because, when I meet with my friends from the former faith, one thing that's really interesting is there's this concept of living your life to glorify his name, to glorify God, to live the life of Christ. There's something that is something in the former faith that I love, right? And they'll ask the question, or they'll say stuff like, who's been living their life for God? What have you done this week for God? And it's a very, very interesting question because even me, when I was in the former faith, I always have that reminder, and people always acknowledged when someone was giving glory, when someone was glorifying God through their life. And I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? That's something that we don't do enough in Providence. I don't feel like we do, right? It's like in Providence, I feel like we limit the glorifying or living a life glorifying God to just evangelism, just lecturing, just managing, or just running full-time in the church. I'm not sure if you guys feel that way, but I kind of felt that, my experiences so far is like, if you really want to glorify God, you got to go out and evangelize, street evangelism, go lecture, go manage, go run full time. And that's the way you glorify God, right? And when you really think about it, yes, I was someone who went out and did that, and I lived my life glorifying God like that. But when you think about the flip side, then it would be really difficult, or it would make people who are married, have children, or in a very busy career, to live a life glorifying his name. When we know that's not true, that you can glorify God in any aspect in life, right? So glorify your name, to praise your name in your life. In Providence, the feeling I get, and remember, it's my personal feeling, but you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree, or you feel it or you don't. It feels like it's about full-time or nothing, right? All the full-time people are glorified. Oh, they're doing so much for God. They're doing this. They're living their life for God. That is their job kind of thing, right? So they're living life glorifying God, praising his name kind of thing. And then it's that or nothing. And only people that run full-time are glorifying God's name. Only people that are running and going out evangelism, spending hours on campus and stuff like that too, are the ones that are giving glory to God, right? And, even when it comes to giving glory to God, I think sometimes we are so narrow-minded that we think to give glory to God is we have to do a dance. To give glory to God means I have to praise. That's the only way to do it, right? Where there are so many different ways to give glory to God. And I think if it's not acknowledged or not recognized, then people really feel like they're not really doing anything meaningful. Like, for instance, like tech. Tech is giving glory to God. That is a hard thing, right? Tech, editing stuff for the services, it's not just praise, not just, these are all things we know for sure because it's so open and in our face, doing praise leading, being up on stage, doing the choir, doing the instruments, right? But we don't really feel it for things like setting up the church. Like, it doesn't really feel like it, does it? Because if people really felt like that was glorifying God, living for God in that way, people wouldn't be so, like, going away from that. Oh, I don't want to clean the church. Oh, I don't want to do this, right? So the big question is, how can, I think we need to change our perspective on what does it mean to live a life glorifying His name, praising His name without running full time, right? And yeah, I think there is a stigma with those that run and those that don't run directly. We can't, and of course, I'm not saying that the people who are running full time are not doing a good job, or that they're not glorifying or edifying, or whatever, giving glory to, glorifying His name, right? But one thing I do know from the former faith is there is a huge emphasis on all people. All people can glorify in their life. All people can praise His name in their everyday life. It's about how we live, how we speak about God's love in our life, how we testify each and every day, how we treat others, being an amazing person that everyone can come to. It's like there's so many other ways that we can give glory to God, right? It's someone who emanates God's love in their entire life, which means that people should be able to see God when they come to your house and see how your family runs, how you treat your family, how you take care of your kids, how you love your wife or your husband or something along that line. Because I think sometimes that, and you guys can correct, I'm saying this from my perspective, so you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, or you can tell me that you may feel the same thing. Sometimes I think to myself that maybe I hide my faith at times when I don't need to. You know what I mean? It's like, of course, in Providence, we don't, sometimes we're not going to be open like, I'm in Providence, this, and this. However, that shouldn't mean I should hide that I'm a person of faith, that I pray, that I go to church, right? Because being a person of God is perfectly okay, right? Even if society doesn't think so, it's fine. We're in a society right now where people will get like really upset at you just if you have the wrong political beliefs, right? So no matter what, people are going to disagree with us in many different areas, right? We can pray with each other. We can pray in front of people. We can talk about God. We can tell people that we go to church, right? Just showing people that, we are people who are grateful to God and we're living a great life because we have God in our life. Like, for me, coming from the former faith and still having a lot of friends from the former faith, I know a lot of pastors. So amazing. How they talk to people, how they are so kind, how they want to help other people too, and not just thinking about themselves, but they're really going out trying to help everyone. And my personal experiences, I don't know if I see it that much in Provi. Like, of course, we'll help people inside Providence, and sometimes we don't, but these people in the former faith, they're helping everyone. It doesn't matter if they go to church or not. They just like praising God, telling people that they should go to church and just helping them out every way they can. They give glory in such a way. Like, for instance, I went to this one, a friend from a former church. A friend from the former faith invited me to like a party for their church, and I went. And the people hosting, the guy was a model, straight up model for like, what was he model for? Like Polo and Gucci and all this other stuff. And he's showing his album, right? And that, you might think to yourself as like, oh, isn't that kind of arrogant that they're kind of showing an album like this, right? But here's the crazy part. They were showing these albums and I'm just like going, wow, like this guy is really, he's successful. He's a model. He's good looking, everything else. But after he shows these pictures, he just starts talking about how thankful he was to God and the testifying of how he became a model, how hard it was at certain times, and like the difficulties he went through and how he actually came to meet his wife and how he came to God. And it just turned this session of looking at his modeling pictures into like giving glory to God. And it was something that was really graceful. It was super graceful. And I thought to myself the same thing as like, you know what? We need to be able to have that type of, wanting to share not just the gospel, because, when we think about sharing about God, we kind of think to ourselves that means share the gospel, preach the word, teach the 30 lessons, like that's preaching the gospel. And the answer is no, that's only one side of it, right? The other side of it is talking about what God has done in my life. Testifying that, God, I was really thankful. I prayed for this and I got this. I was so thankful. Man, I was really thinking about this. God gave me an answer and I'm so thankful about this. Like, there are so many different ways besides just teaching the lessons. There's so many ways besides just doing things in a certain way, right? It's like we kind of put it into a box. Like this is the only way you pray, give glory to God is what? Praising and dancing. That's the way you do it, right? This is the only way to testify is what? You have to preach the word and make sure they listen to the word. You know what I mean? And I thought to myself man, we got to be thinking differently. Like our mind is like too put into a box. It's too narrow that we have to widen it out, that we just got to give glory, right? In a lot of many multiple different ways. And I think that's something that that we have to kind of bring ourselves to make this like a habit when we meet each other, when what we talk about. Like even for me and the guys, sometimes we just talk about sports and that's fine, right? But sometimes I think it's not good to just meet and only talk about those things, but it's good to talk about different things. Like I went out with a campus guy and I loved it because we're talking, we're at McDonald's eating, yes, bad food, and he even bought it for me. But we went out and then he was started asking me, how did I come to Providence? How did I do this? And when I started talking to him about it, his eyes lit up and he's like, wow, that's so amazing. Oh, I can't believe that. Really? That's so great. And when I was talking to this person, I was just like, wow, like there is a difference. Like we need to be those that really can give glory to God whenever we meet each other, give grace, because a lot of people need it more than we think they do. Either way, so yeah, that's kind of what the thoughts that I was thinking about just the last day. And if you guys have anything that you want to share, put in the comments below. If you think the same way as me, or if you think differently, I would love to hear what you think. But yeah, I feel it's very, very different, and it's not as open as Providence is not as open as we could be. Because it doesn't mean you have to say that I'm in Providence or, oh, I believe this, this, and this. It's more of just giving glory to God. Like just making your life about God, So I would love to hear your comments about that too. Either way. So yeah, that's kind of like the first segment. A couple of things I want to talk about. And I hope it's something that kind of inspires you guys too and opens your heart a little bit more to think about that. Either way. So yeah, it's Thursday. What am I doing today? Oh, today I actually give education to the guys, to the campus and the SS. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't expect a lot of them to come, but I am excited about it anyways. Either way. So that's what I'm doing tonight. What are you guys doing tonight? Either way. So let's get into our first break of the day.
Confident, unshaken. We are proud, unwavering. Confident now. We are so proud. Hey, have you caught a vibe by now?
Our clock is ticking, the hands of our clock keep on moving, they never stop. 'Cause we are following the timing of God who is mighty, we don't stop.
I will do the work I must do. I'm the key to the outcome that I want.
With the truth of the times we run diligently, we're making history. I trust in the power that God's given me. I make myself better every day. Since God is with us, supporting us always, we can never lose while we are on this path. No matter what comes our way, whatever may happen now.
Hey, have you caught a vibe by now? So what?
Confident, we're confident, yeah, doesn't matter what may come.
Confident, unshaken.
Confident, we're confident, yeah, come on, babe, we'll stand as
We
one.
are proud, unwavering.
Confident, unshaken.
Confident now.
We are proud, unwavering.
We are so proud.
Confident, we're confident, yeah.
Hey, have you caught a vibe by now? So what? No matter what happens, we'll turn tables and we'll climb. Grab the time, fix our minds, fix our contradiction, we will shine. We'll shake it up like a sneeze, say God bless you. If there's obstacles to block our way, we'll step right over. Ha. Gain momentum, don't tremble, moving forward, just one more step, and now we're going forward. We're following the time, we follow how we come together, we're stronger. And like heaven, I am established, firm and shaken. And just like the sun, the will of God is never stopping. Like a backpack, God has my back, He's with me, so I'm safe, I'm so confident. I have dignity, whatever it may be. I'm ready to face with energy, battery charged up. I'm set up with the Lord, I'm confident, we're winning. Game, set.
God is with us, supporting us always. We can never lose while we are on this path. No matter what comes our way, whatever may happen now. Hey, have you caught a vibe by now?
So what?
Confident, we're confident, yeah. Doesn't matter what may come.
Confident, unshaken.
Confident, we're confident, yeah. Come with me, we'll stand as one.
We are proud, unwavering.
Confident, unshaken.
Confident, now.
We are proud, unwavering.
We are so proud.
Confident, we're confident, yeah. Hey, have you caught a vibe by now?
So what?
Confident, we're confident, yeah. Doesn't matter what may come.
Confident, unshaken.
Confident, we're confident, yeah. Come with me, we'll stand as
We
one.
are proud, unwavering.
Confident, unshaken.
Confident, now.
We are proud, unwavering.
We are so proud.
Confident, we're confident, yeah. Hey, have you caught a vibe by now?
So what? Yeah, huh. Since God is with us, we are confident, unshaken. Yeah, huh. The Holy Spirit is with us, we are proud, unwavering. Since God is with us, we are confident, unshaken. The Holy Spirit is with us, we are proud, unwavering. Since we live by God, we'll do it confidently. Confidently, do it confidently.
Hey, have you caught a vibe by now?
So what?
All right, so let's get into today's word study. And every Thursday we have QNA Thursday. Today's question is very, very interesting. It's like a three-parter, I think. And this comes from Kimberly. And yes, I kind of made fun of her because in her first sentence in the last comment, like the other comment she gave, she's like going, maybe I'm just a little bit bitter. And I was like, yeah, you sound super bitter. And, she's like going, oh, so you had to bring that. Well, I can't help it. If you write, maybe you're bitter, it's okay for me to comment, isn't it? Isn't it? Wouldn't that be fair that if you wrote, maybe I'm bitter, I'd be like, straight up like, oh, someone's bitter? Must be a girl. Either way. So good question coming out. And there's like a couple questions that come from this one, and it has to do with male evangelism, and especially for girls who are getting a little bit older in, say, their late 20s, early 30s and such too. And I think that late 20s is probably the best time to start thinking this way. Like, I don't think you should be waiting until your 30s for you to kind of act on this. Because even if you're not going to get married within the next 3, 4, 5 years, you got to understand, evangelism is not easy. Like, something I talked about the other day is evangelism is not an easy thing. It's totally not. Because if it was, then we'd be doing way better in it already. But we already know, like, just because, some seems like, oh yeah, girls can go out and help. But just because they're helping doesn't mean it's easier all of a sudden, right? So one of the things that was brought up by Kimberly, right? I believe it is Kimberly, right? And I found it quite funny, but very interesting too. Okay, so it was. This is what it reads. Look, first she calls me out. Can you blame me for being bitter? So here it is. So this is what the comment says. It says, in all honesty, I've tried a few times at least to evangelize guys, and they almost always end up liking the evangelist, being me. Ha ha ha. And aren't doing it to learn the word. It's uncomfortable and puts us at risk for temptation and whatnot. I agree. And I do agree that in this history, there is too strict of a separation between opposite sex. And that's a totally different question. We're not going to go over this one here, right? So that first part, like, this is the multiple parts to this. Like, the first part of the question is talking about, and this is something that was brought up earlier. I think it was by Kimberly or someone else also. No, I think it was brought up by someone else. And it's true. They almost always end up liking the evangelist because it's the opposite sex also, right? And of course, girls in Providence are amazing, right? So these men are going to find these amazing women that they'll never find in the world. So it's kind of easier for them to like, wow, where do these good girls come from kind of thing, right? So I know, like, already we know that it is difficult. All right, so that's the first thing we have in mind is it's going to be difficult. And yes, people will come for the wrong reasons. It's true. But I also know that one thing that Sunseam did say was, and I think that's something that we have to be very good at discerning, is this. Like, even for myself, when I came into this history, I didn't come into this history thinking to myself like, oh man, I can't wait to meet the Lord's second coming. I just want to learn the word every day, go to church 8 times a week. It's going to be so fun. Like, I'm not thinking that at all. I don't think anyone was thinking that. We're talking probably 1% of the people evangelized are actually thinking that way, right? And if you guys know my testimony, I started coming back to church to restart, and part of the reason was I wanted to find a girlfriend. And I abstained from having a girlfriend in high school. I didn't have a girlfriend in university for the first 2 years. And I thought to myself, now is the time, but where are all the good girls there at church? And one thing that Sunseam did say was, yeah, when people come to church, not everyone comes for the right reason in the beginning. Right? But, God usually gives them 3 years for them to get their focus right on what they should be focusing on. Do you know what I mean? So part of the thing is, I do agree. Yeah, it's hard. And of course, if they come to church and if they make it past that point, like, I want to come into church, sometimes they may not be coming for the right reasons. But I do think that just because they might come only because they like you, may not be, like, I'm not saying that, oh, they like you, then just bring them. I'm not saying that either. But of course, we need to discern really well. But I also know that sometimes people are brought for different reasons, but God gives them like these 3 years of honing and taking care of themselves, and for them to switch their mindset to something completely different so that they can focus on God, right? So there's one thing that I would put in. I'm not saying that's all situations. I'm not saying, oh, they like you, don't worry, just bring them anyways. I'm not saying that either. Everything needs absolute discernment. Right? So the next part of the comment says, it's not a big ask to have guys, married or not, partake in men's ministry and help it grow. We're all brides in this history and running for the Lord. And even with churches with female head leaders, there's got to be at least one other male member with a minister status that they can go to for extra mentorship. Okay? Now, I got a couple things. This part here, I would say there would have to be several assumptions, and it's probably only Kimberly's church or like her church or what she's seeing, right? So are we saying that there are literally no guys helping with male ministry? So that's the first question, right? Like zero people. No one helps at all. No guys. Absolute zilch, right? Is there no guys in your church that are doing anything to help male ministry? Or is it there are some guys helping, but it's not very successful? Like, there are some guys, and there are some guys who come to study, but in the end, they don't pass. Like, that's a completely different story than there are 0 guys helping at all. It is, it is like a barren wasteland of 0 guys in our church, and even the guys that we have are not helping, right? So those two are two different things. Is it really 0, or are there guys helping, but the newcomers that are males are not actually passing? Like, there's another thing. And I think that could be a much bigger situation, not meaning, like I talked about yesterday about the internal and external factors. And one of the variables is a lot of guys are disenfranchised by the situation in society, and they feel helpless. And, coming to God is not one of the things that they're really, really interested in. There's a lot other things that they're interested in because, like they might not be, it's about making more money because it seems like to them, all the girls want them to make more money or something along. Like, there's a lot of different things that could be going on if there are males learning, but yet they're not passing, right? So there's one thing that I would bring up, and that makes that's something that we do have to take into consideration, that sometimes, there's a bigger problem more than just there's no one helping. Okay. Now, another thing that came up in this comment is, even with churches with female head leaders, there's got to be at least one other male member with a minister status that can go to for extra mentorship. And I would say it would depend on each church, right? From church to church, whether they're smaller or bigger. And I do think that you don't need to be a minister to get extra mentorship. But I will say that the one like when I talk to leaders around the world, guess what the one of the biggest issues that people talk about, like leaders talk about, and pardon the pun, but it's manpower. Like most churches don't have enough manpower, people that are able to go out and help directly, right? What manpower would be one of the biggest issues that every church leader I've spoken to has said their church is struggling with. Is like, we need more workers, we need more people to run, right? And that's something that I think we have to take into consideration also, is sometimes not everyone is made to be someone who runs like full-time for the history. Are there people that can be mentors? Absolutely. Can anyone be a mentor? And the answer is no, because there are some people who are not wise, don't give good advice. They're not people who listen very well, right? So I do think that manpower could be difficult in certain situations. And I also know that sometimes some guys don't click with other guys, right? Or the guys' situation in the church may not be as united, where the guys are always hanging out, having fun, playing sports, doing things together. Like I've seen that type of situation too. And this is kind of what the churches actually struggle with too. So when it comes to these different types of points, yeah, I think it's something that we have to kind of look at a bigger picture also, right? Like there's a bigger picture that we have to kind of look at and say, okay, so what is the real situation? Like that first question is, are there really zero guys helping? There's no guys going out to evangelize or help. And in most cases, I would say there are guys out there helping, right? In most cases. But I would say the bigger issue is there's not a lot of guys who want to study the Bible. There's not a lot of guys who really want to even be there, right? And not a lot of guys that actually pass, right? So I would say from my experience, it would be the latter, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were churches with specific situations like the first one, like there's literally no guys to help. Why? Because I've seen a church that has like 8 girls and 1 guy. And the guy was the youngest, so it was very, very hard for this person to help. The girls were kind of like better off, like we're better off just doing it on our own because, you know, this guy's so young, right? Just first year university. He's just trying to get his feet wet into the university and stuff like that too. So there are special cases that I've seen too. But the biggest question comes now. This is the biggest question that came from this comment. It says, for us girls that are getting, well, she put girlies, but for us girls that are getting older, in our late 20s to early 30s, and I would say, yeah, I would start thinking about this in the mid to late 20s. I'd start thinking about it. But what do you think about us evangelizing our future husbands, potential future husbands? Doing it properly with close counseling, of course. And as you said, many churches don't even bring in 10% of lives, so it's incredibly difficult. And then here's a very good point is, like, and this is something that someone else brought up too, but they said the opposite. But think about this. Why would I put myself at risk trying to evangelize a guy that another sister in faith may get? It sounds selfish, but technically, I understand. It makes sense, right? Time gets even more valuable as we get older. We're talking about girls, right? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Hope I didn't sound bitter there. And the answer is you sound bitter. No, I'm just kidding. So you don't sound bitter at all, right? These are real questions. And I personally, truly feel they need to be discussed in the church. Of course, not with the whole church. There's no need to have the SS and the campus in there. Like, there's no need for that, obviously, right? But there is a need for the older people to start discussing this. Because if people are starting to think about this when they're in their mid-30s, just think about how long it takes for us to generate enough leads, generate enough people to start studying, generate enough people to start passing, in order for them to, to finally have a potential partner in the future, right? It's going to take a long time. It's not a 1-year thing. Then all of a sudden 20 guys come. How many times have you guys ever seen that? No, it's going to take time. And I would say that you'd want to give yourself at least 3 to 5 years as a plan for this, right? Just getting guys in, right? And there's a couple things that I would bring up that we do need to think about. So when we say potential future guys, I would say a potential future guy is someone in your age range. Like anyone in your age range, right? I don't think it's a good idea to go out and just find the person that I want to marry right now. I think that's something that is extreme and probably would only apply to people in their late 30s. Do you know what I mean? Like that's in the situation where you're kind of like, there's not enough time. You know what I mean? But if you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s, I think you can plan something for like 3 to 5 years. But I wouldn't go into it looking for the actual partner. I would, at a young age, it's just about getting more guys in there, right? Around the same age. Like, that's what I would be thinking. Only because of our situation. Like, I'm not saying doing this in a normal, regular situation. Remember this, guys. My caveat to this is we're only thinking about this because of the current situation. That's the only reason I'm talking about this, right? Partly because it's not really getting talked about a lot anyways, but the only reason to talk about this because that's our situation. If our situation was not like this, I would not be saying these things like, oh, I think we should start thinking about this. I would not, right? So I do think depending on your age, let's say your mid-20s, if you're in your mid-20s, like 24, 25, I wouldn't even think about, I wouldn't even be thinking about like, hey, I got to find someone that I like right now. No way. Like, I wouldn't do that. I would be like just finding, helping out to find guys that are around my age, right? I'll be trying to figure it out in that way so that if they get evangelized in the next 2 to 3 years, then they'll have like another couple of years for them to grow, spiritually mature. And then, there's going to be more people available kind of thing, right? The only time that I would be like, hey, I think you're going to have to find someone who is someone you really like, that you might marry. And I would say super special case would be like late 30s where there's not enough time, right? There's not enough time for this to happen, right? So that's why when I say potential future husbands, I don't really mean find someone you like and then bring them in. Like I don't think in that way. And it really depends on your age too. But like I said, the older you get, the more you may have no choice but to do that. But I don't think that's the right course of doing it, because if you find someone you like, there's a big problem there is this person may not pass. But then what if you already make a connection with them? And then, I think it's very, very difficult and I think that's something that's not really a safe or like that would be a very careful way to do it. But if you were to just find people in your age group, right, whether younger or older, I agree with you that doing it properly, close counseling, of course, but I'm not sure if you're talking about finding someone that you like and you want to marry. Like, I'm not sure if that's the actual thing you're talking about. But if anything, I think the most important thing is, right? I think the most important thing is the discussion. And I find it pretty good right now that we're talking about this on this podcast. And I'm super thankful that I'm not under any other church, because I'm sure a lot of churches would get mad at me for saying these, like, oh my gosh, why are you saying these? Like, I think some people might be like a little like, why are you saying this kind of thing? But this is my podcast. It's a personal thing. So personally, everything is going to really depend on the situation of each country and each church, right? For instance, say for Kimberly who wrote this, it's possible that there's very few guys in your church. However, there could overall in the country be much more than we think. And that's why discussion is needed, right? We can't really base it on a single church. That would be too narrow to look at, right? You need to look at the whole. And that's why discussion is necessary, right? Discussion with your head leader, discussion with your career department leader, discussion with the headquarters, right? And, like you said, I completely agree. It would have to be done really well and really carefully, right? In order for this to happen, but the discussion's got to come out if it's a really worrisome thing. Like, I would be really worried if, let's just say tomorrow I talk to my head leader and say, hey, so I was just wondering what we're doing about the situation with the guys. And there's not enough guys and stuff like that. So what do you think about that? And then the head leader says to me, oh yeah, it's a big problem. Then I'd be like, you know the problem and we're not discussing it and we're not thinking about how to do this better. Like, that would be a worry for me. I'm like, what? We should be talking about it right now. Now, of course, I'm not going to get upset. It's like, let's make a plan, right? So let me give you an example of a situation, right? Let's say that your church, there are 11 people ready to get married. Let's just say 11, okay? And there are 10 girls and one guy, which means the ratio is 10 to 1. Okay, 10 to 1. That means that 9 out of 10 girls will not get married. You have a 90% chance of not getting married. 90. Okay? Then I would definitely come up with a plan to find, to bring in more males. Because there's no other way. Unless all 9 girls decide, it's okay, we don't need to get married, which I don't think would ever happen, right? You'd have to come up with a plan with your head leader, with the HQ, right? In discussion. Even for me, if the situation was even 3 to 1 or 4 to 1, I would already be planning for this. Because it's like 3 to 1 means that 2 out of every 3, which means 66% chance of not getting married. 4 to 1 means 75% chance. These are big odds, right? I would already be planning for this, and because this is the history of God. Yes, it is the history of God, but this is people's lives, not just it's not just something that we should put aside, something formality like, oh, well, what can we do? There's just no guys, right? I don't think I shouldn't be handled that way, right? We can do something about it, and if the situation is in your country is like that, I think you have to do something about it, but it must be carefully planned, carefully discussed, draw lines and boundaries that everyone should agree with, right? Guidelines so that members can be safe from temptation, because temptation is a strong thing. When you start to like someone, man, the heart is stronger than truth. Straight up. The heart is stronger than truth. Once you start to like someone, you kind of don't care about what is true. And you won't even that's why people commit the fall and do things that they shouldn't, right? And because of that, there has to be some guidelines planned really well. I would say some things like, hey, I don't know what, you'll never be in a one-on-one situation, some rules in there, right? Where everyone should be constantly taken care of well, but everyone's doing it for the well-being. You know what I mean? It's such a difficult topic that even for me, I'm like, man, I don't want to say the wrong thing because I don't want people to all of a sudden start yelling at their pastors and saying this and that. Why aren't we doing anything? But I also know that it's a very important topic too. But I hope that everyone does it wisely, has these good conversation, right? And I think that everyone needs to know the risks that are involved. This is, we're only doing this, which is a little bit more high risk because of the situation. And we all need to know that there's no guarantee. That even if you find someone that is suitable, there's no guarantee they're going to come to this history, right? And that's why the one thing that I would educate people in for sure is everyone should have absolute standards, like something you would never cross, right? It's like, I'll have an absolute standard when it comes to my faith. I will never deny God, and I will never deny Jesus. That's when I was a Christian, that was I would never do that. Even if I stopped going to church, I would never do that. I had boundaries that were set, right? And I do think that you have to think about that too when it comes for something as important as finding someone you're going to live for the rest of your life with. And here's something that I'll tell you what is an absolute standard. Statistics show that there are 4 major things that must be discussed and agreed upon to make sure a marriage lasts. If you have these 4 things discussed and agreed upon, then your chances of getting divorced, it goes down by 75%. And guess what? One of the 4 important things that you need to discuss is religion. It's faith. It's one of them. And if this one thing is not set and it's not right, you're going to have problems in the future. You're really going to have those problems in the future. And that's why it's something that you have to think about very, very carefully, right? Have a standard where it's like, hey, I don't care how good this guy is. Because if they're not in this history, what difference does it make? Well, because what are they going to teach my children? What are they going to show my children? It's like you have to think very, very future. Think about the future. As Sansim said, looks, all these other different things, they go away. In the end, it's about character. Right? It's about how much they've made themselves. It's about their faith. It's about who they are. Faith is part of their life, right? And that's why I do think before getting into this, people this is not an easy subject. This is not something that I wish that this would never come up, but because of the situation, we have no choice. But for me, I'm like, whew, yeah. Now that we're in this predicament, what do we need to do? And the answer is, we really need to go about this carefully, discussed in detail, and make sure that everyone from headquarters to head leaders, your career department, all the girls that are there are on the same page. Because the last thing you want is for all of a sudden all these like people like falling in love and they all start leaving and stuff. You know, like that's the last thing that you want. So, like I said, there's always like these. I'll qualify myself a bunch of times. Like, I don't think you should go out looking for the one that you're going to marry. I don't think so. Unless you're at the super, like in the late 30s. Late 30s and above, I think that might be maybe even up like 36 and above or something along that line. Because there's not enough time. But anything lower than that, I think that the younger you are, the more time you have. But you can still prepare for the future by making sure that there's, like helping out to make sure that there's more guys in the history for your future's sake. And you don't know who you're going to marry because, it's all about what does the Holy Spirit inspire us, right? So it's a tough subject, but it needs to be talked about. It does. And I don't know if you guys are talking about this in your churches or not. You guys can write in your comments if you are or not, but... I'm talking about career. I'm not talking about like campus, right? We're talking about career, which is right after campus, like say from 22, 23 years old. If I was a girl, which I'm not, if I was a girl, knowing the situation that we're in, I would already start thinking about it from 22. From 22. From 23, the moment I get into career. I would already start thinking about it because it's not too far in the future. A lot of people will start going to blessing maybe 25, 26 years old, which means it's not too far away. And I think that's something that people should start thinking about earlier. And, the countries and churches should be discussing about also, or else it's we got no one to blame but ourselves. And in the end, if nothing's said or nothing's made. So yes, very, very good question. A lot of things that it made me think a lot more deeply about it. And of course, like I'll tell you this, the reason why I care about this a lot, because it's about our history. And I'll tell you one thing, like one of the reasons why I don't like the situation at all, where some people would say to me, oh, you're so lucky because, man, you get to choose from like 5,000 girls or whatever it is. Like if you're a guy, you're choosing from so many girls. And here's the thing that I don't like. I'll tell you, this is what my honest opinion why it's so weird to me to have such a weird ratio, like so lopsided. Because I would not feel comfortable that a girl who is many levels above me will choose me because they have no other choice. That doesn't make me feel good. That would actually destroy my pride. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want that. I want someone who's the perfect fit. But, you know what I mean? Like, when I think about that, I was like, yeah, I don't like it because it's almost like they have to fight for something that may be levels lower than what they really are. Do you know what I mean? So, for me I don't like that situation. And I hope to have this situation corrected within the next half, the half decade. Like within the next 5 years, I'm really, really hoping that we can come together, discuss it, and make sure that this situation gets a lot better than it is right now. And that's my real opinion, right? I don't think it's not good for anyone to have this type of ratio. Yeah. I don't think it's good. Why? Because it means like if most of the people are women, I'm talking strictly from the guy's point of view, then a lot of the decisions that are made are going to be more geared towards females, which is not going to help guys, right? We're going to be doing things that we probably don't even want to do, but there's no choice because the majority of everyone is all girls. Do you know what I mean? Like there's always going to be something. It's not just affecting us, it's affecting the whole church in that sense. And like I said, this is not just us in Providence. It's around the world in other churches too. There are less men going to church also. All right? So that was quite a long one, but I think it was a very, very important thing for us to think about. And if anything, like I'm saying, is my opinion is you guys got to discuss it because I don't know each country's situation. I don't know each church's situation, but it's got to be discussed in detail, planned really well, very, very careful. Kind of like what you brought up of the counseling and stuff like that too. I think all that stuff has to be brought up, but it is a real situation that we need to work on with the best of our ability. Okay. So there it is, guys. That is the Q&A Thursday. It was only one comment, but there were multiple questions inside of it. And I'm very, very grateful that people are actually talking about it and asking about it too. Like I said, I think we should be talking about it more. All right. So there it is, Q&A Thursday. Let's move into the second break for the day. Okay, so let's get into the final segment for today on this wonderful Thursday podcast. And today we're going to go into Provi in the media. And I want to do part 2 and go a little bit more detail of the Channel 7 News program that came out in Australia just a week ago. And I did take a look at it a couple times, and I told you kind of the general thoughts that I had on it. I was quite disappointed by, like a reputable, I'm hoping it's a reputable, well, I don't think anymore, but a reputable, news agency not doing their vetting of information and such. And it was very, very one-sided. And of course, there's a ton of stuff that comes from Netflix in there. So I'm not going to really talk about too much of the Netflix stuff. Why? Because I talked about it in the other one, like all the stuff that is proven and disproven and stuff like that too. Like the opening segment itself was, you could just see it's the way they're going about it is like they are infiltrating a devious cult that is coming to take your daughters. It's like kind of that feeling, It's all dark. It's like, oh, we're on our way to Warmingdong right now. And no one has ever seen footage, right? And I talked about this on Tuesday. I was like, no, that's incorrect. We've had plenty of footage before. There's already stuff on the internet. There's already stuff on YouTube. It's kind of like, okay, so they were invited. Okay, they asked, and we allowed them to come in, right? So it kind of makes you feel like we're going into the combine, and this is where all the stuff happened. And in the opening segment of the show too, they put up the audio from Netflix, the one that Maple allegedly recorded during the incident, where we're already seeing that it's been manipulated, right? So even that itself is like, you're putting in an audio that is already shown now to be seen as manipulated and edited, and may not even be allowed to be evidence in the court trial. Right, that's like an already strike that they never did any of their due diligence, right? Music is very ominous. The thing is set in such a dark, like lighting is dark, the way they put in the black and white, or sometimes, or it's just done in a very devious way, right? So, it starts off, with like how people are evangelized, the love bombing, and like Rick Ross is called the deprogrammer. It's kind of like, these people come up with their opinions. And also this Amy from Australia, who's the one in the trial right now in Korea. She said she was forced to quit the job, which there's no evidence. She's not allowed to eat until 12 p.m. These are just things being said, right? But you can't have carbs? What? Like, what do you mean? Is this true? Sleep and eat deprived? Is that like what is going on here? Like, is this something that they can prove rather than just saying it on a program? Because if I was a program too, people can say anything that they want, right? And that's something that we have to kind of look into and say like, yeah, well, where's the proof you have in this also, right? KDH comes onto the program. He talks once again about the 10,000 girls. And I told you also on Tuesday, even in Korea, you need to have the list, but there's no list whatsoever. And even the partial list that they do have is like not even full names and such, but you have to have that in these types of trials and situations in Korea, right? So even there's like, really 10,000? They go into the mosquito net incident. That's all on Netflix, like a bunch of stuff all on Netflix, right? Now, there are probably 3 things that I would look at in this program. Remember, it's a short program too. It's not a long one. I think it was like altogether an hour, including commercials and stuff. It wasn't very long. So everything was chopped up and everything was edited, right? So like all the other stuff, whether it's the audio recording or the stuff from Netflix, you guys can check out my Netflix there. So all that stuff was done at the beginning, kind of to build a narrative of what they want to show people who Providence is in Korea. Okay? So there are a couple of things that are new that we have to try and figure out. And that's something that I do think we have to look at very, very objectively. All the Netflix stuff, I don't really care. We've already been through that. I don't really care about that stuff. There's about 3 different things that we have to look at and say, oh, this is very interesting. What does it really mean? So one of the things that actually happened when the reporter said that, oh, they looked into this charity. So, because it's a church, it's a what do you call it? Nonprofit organization, right? So they're under they're considered a small size charity. Small size meaning the amount of revenue they're able to take, the amount of revenue they take in each year, right? So you're going to have a small size charity, medium size charity, large size charity, stuff like that too. And our church, obviously, because it's not a large church, is a small size charity, right? We don't take in that money. However, one of the things that they did bring up in the show is that we checked last year. Okay, sorry, my Australian accent is terrible. We checked. Okay, I can't even do it. I can't, because I'm on the spot now. And Christy brought it up that it's terrible, so I'm not going to even try it. So they're like going, we checked their revenue, and they brought in $1 million, like in 2021 or 2022, something like a couple of years ago. They brought in $1 million, which is not a small size charity, right? So they bring it up and they're saying, oh, look at all this money that they brought in. They should take that money and give it to all the victims or something like that, right? Now, we might look at that and say, oh, that's ridiculous, but then think about this. $1 million is a lot of money, right? It is a lot of money. How did they get $1 million from a church that small in that year, right? How did they get all that money? So for me too, I need to ask and say, okay, so what is the deal with this revenue of $1 million all of a sudden? It just seems like that's a lot of money for such a small church in Providence, right? And one thing that people don't know, and I think all of us have seen this before, and we've also heard of this before in Providence too, is that was the year they were saving to buy a church. Yeah, so donations were taken for that year, right? And interestingly enough, half of the revenue are actually loans from either members or like Korea coming to help out with it too. Like they're actually loans. They're not even like, that's almost half the money is like that, right? And also, the church in Australia, they did it legally by getting permission from the government to take in that much revenue for that year. So all things were done properly. So when you think about this, the way that they put it's like, oh, and they got this, and how did they make, why are they making all this money? And then all of a sudden, like in the beginning, they're talking about, they're doing this, they just want money and sex. That's what this cult is about, kind of thing, right? And they bring up the issue of revenue, and $1 million was brought in for such a small church. But when you look at the real situation, right, and they're not talking about it, it is all done legally because that was the year they're doing it to get a church. Almost half of that was in loans. Money was given from like Korea and stuff like that too, but they all got permission. It was done legally. So when you see it this way, think about how you can play that and make it look bad. Oh, they're making so much. Oh, they're just making people work for free. Like this is what the deprogrammer was saying. They're just making him. They just want free labor and make tons of money and bring the young girls to Sunsteam and stuff like this. And one of the things that they're looking at is this proof that look at how much money they brought in. Oh my goodness, right? But when you look at the real situation, it was only that 1 year, right? And if you look at the, how do we know that they use the money to buy a church? Because now they have a church, and on top of it, they're asking how much is in the account now is back to normal what they normally have, right? In the tens of thousands, it's back to normal what a normal church should have, right? Of that size. So when you think about that, you're like, oh, okay, but you can kind of see that. If there was two sides of the story, you would understand why only in that 1 year that revenue was so high, but legally done. Talk to the government. And half of the donations were loans, right? So when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. And that's something that I do think that we have to understand, right? That, a lot of times you'll see the media coming in and not doing both sides. The second thing I want to talk about, actually, there's probably like 3 or 4 things I'll talk about, but 3 things, the major things I'll talk about. The other thing I really want to talk about is their visit to Wolmyeongdong. You'll watch it. It's just the way it was done. Of course, it wasn't done with I had this word in my mind, right? It wasn't done in a fair way, right? Because for me, even before this program came out, I already knew that that this news agency was going to Wolmyeongdong, right? So here's the interesting thing. What they said to Korea was, we'll send you the questions early, right? We'll send you the questions early, and we want to show, we want to go to Wolmyeongdong and ask you questions about it, right? So what happened was, so this is something that you need to know, is 7 News Spotlight Crew, they signed an agreement with CGM Korea. And what was the agreement? That both sides, their claims, right? Both sides' claims will be impartial, and it will not be a biased broadcasting or distortive edits, right? But if you watch it, when they're doing the interviews with some people in Wolmyeongdong and the leaders in Korea, it was done really unethically. So they actually signed a contract. It will be impartial. Both sides will be impartial. Like both sides of what is happening will be impartial, not biased broadcasting and no distortive edits. If you take a look at it, it's done in a very ominous and devious way. And they even signed a contract for it. So I am hoping that this contract is legit in both Australia and Korea, that they can sue them. That's what I'm hoping for, because when you watch it, there is nothing about both sides being shown, right? It's not impartial at all. Like, the whole show is they're already guilty, right? And, the way that the way that I looked at this is like, oh, it was done in, there's a word that I used right before I was thinking about this. It just wasn't done in the way that, they said one thing and they did it in a completely different way, and they even signed a contract for it too. So that's why for me, I was just like, that's just, yeah. So for that, I was really, really disappointed in that too. I was really hoping that they would come in unbiased, but they made this program to be very, very one-sided, even though they signed a contract with CGM Korea, say that they'll show both sides impartially and not biased with like these cut-in edits. They'll like say a question like, hey, have you ever paid off anyone? And it's like, no comment. It's not, we can't talk about this right now. There's a court ongoing right now. There's a trial ongoing. We can't talk about this. But the way they cut it out is like, no comment, cuts. So it's kind of like, ooh, what are they hiding? You know what I mean? So it was done in a very devious way. So for me, I have even less respect for this news channel too. They're just kind of jumping on the hype train, right, to get more views. The last thing, and I think this is probably the most important one, is at the very, like, everything culminated to that last point at the very end. And what they did was this news, and they have every right to do this, so I'm not saying this is wrong. So what they did was they waited in front of the church. They waited for the two leaders to come, and then they kind of like ambushed them. Like, ambush is like, it sounds so negative, but like they basically like wanted to question them, and the only way they can find who they are is get them is to wait for them in front of the church. And when they came, they're like, oh, there they are. And then they bring the cameras out and they're asking questions like, hey, what do you think about this? Oh, what's going on with this? What's going on with your leader, kind of thing, right? And during that video, because the camera crew is there, you could see one of the leaders is Asian, and very calmly said, "Oh, we're not going to answer this at this time." The other leader, I'm not sure what race she is. Maybe, I'm not sure, Italian or something. I don't know what she is. Like, maybe she's white, right? And she's smiling. As they're coming up to her, talking to her, she's smiling, and they're walking into the church and not saying anything, right? The Asian girl's like, oh, we're not going to talk about this right now. And they walk into the church. And then, of course, they bring up stuff like, and even when we ask questions about this heinous crimes, this girl is smiling like, it's something that, like basically saying that she's saying that it's guilty or something along that line. Like, she's basically painting the picture there. And I had the opportunity to ask. And it was a very honest answer. And, this person's very, very young, too. I think she's like 29, 30 years old, right? So can you imagine if a news crew comes to start saying all these things to you? And everyone has different reactions to it, right? Some people will get angry. Some people will just walk away. Some people are stone-faced. But for her, she's just like, what the heck is going on? And, her natural reaction is just to smile and walk away, right? So for me, I'm like, yeah, everyone has, like, when they're confronted or they're put into a corner, everyone has different ways. Like, for me, if you guys know me, if I'm put into a corner, I try to make fun of it. Like, I'll try to laugh. Right? I'll laugh and poke fun because that's the way I deal with that pressure, is being funny. You know what I mean? Everyone has their different ways. And she's like, yeah, that's just the way it is. They never said anything. They never agreed or said, yeah, it's true. But it's just their natural reaction to, from their opinion, being ambushed by a news agency that just comes out of nowhere. So I thought that was quite interesting too. And then the third thing, did I do 3 already? I did the revenue. I did one. The third one was her smiling in the video, and the last one was this one was probably the most serious one. So what happens was this Amy girl was sent a video over the phone, right? And the video is kind of like an intimidating video. and basically telling Amy that, hey, if you're going to go out to the press and talk about these types of things, we also know a lot of things about you. And, you're going to leave us no choice but to talk about these things if you talk about those things, right? So it was an intimidating video. It wasn't said in a very it's kind of like one of those videos like,
If you go out and if you talk about it, we have all the evidence for you.
It's not like that. But, she's very serious about it in the video. It shows the video too. It's like, hey, we know what you're trying to do. And if you want to, if you're going to go ahead and do this, we also are going to have to talk about you because we have stuff on you also. Right? So honestly, that looks bad. It does look bad, doesn't it? Because it's like an intimidating video to get someone not to say something, right? So when you look at that video, it's like that was shown on the screen, and right away it's like, whoa, okay, was that the right thing to do? And in my head, I was like, probably not the right thing to do. So even for me, I was like, okay, so how am I going to understand this? I need to understand this well. So I went straight to the person who was in the video, and they're like, okay, so what actually happened? And interestingly, this was actually, it wasn't something that this leader did on their own. It wasn't something that the leader did on their own. It was actually a strategy that was discussed with HQ and IMD all together. It was discussed. And with Korean defense, everyone sat together talking what's the best way to do this because, we don't want this to blow up and stuff like that. So eventually in the end, what happened is they decided to do, and I would say from my perspective, from someone who comes from the Western culture, I would say they decided on the good cop, bad cop strategy. You know what I mean? The good cop, bad cop is there's one cop that's unhinged, angry, and is going to kill him and do all these things. And there's one cop that's really, really nice. And what happens is that person being that criminal will confide in the good cop because they don't want to get hurt by the crazy cop kind of thing. There's a good cop, bad cop. I'm sure you guys know that strategy. And they decide to do that. One would be more of an intimidating video, and one would be a more friendly video, right? And that was the strategy that was discussed, and it was done. They all agreed upon it, and they did it that way. Now, was it the right thing to do? Personally, I couldn't say yes or no because I do not know the laws of that country. You know what I'm saying? I don't know the laws of the country for me to say that was good or bad. We can't even look at that in terms of, was it good or bad? Is it bad because it failed? Is that the way we see things? No, because you can do things immorally, right? You can do things that are not ethical, unethical things too, but get the result that you want. So the big question that we have to think about is not so much about the result. Oh, it was a bad thing to do because the result didn't work the way we wanted. So that's not the way we should think about it. We have to think about it also in terms of that country's laws. And that's something that I don't know enough of, that country should be already be discussing and thinking about on their own. Was it the right move? Personally, I wouldn't have done it that way. Personally, I just wouldn't have. Yeah. And I do think that from the people I talked to also, they kind of regret doing it that way. But of course, we have to take responsibility for our actions and the things that we did. Right? I watched the video too a couple times from the program, and it wasn't like I'm threatening you with your life. It was basically, hey, if you start doing all this stuff, you do know we're gonna have no choice but to talk about you too. That's the serious situation that we're in right now. This is what the reality is. So for me, I am not sure. When I think intimidating, I would think much differently. I'd go back to
where are you? We know you. We know where you live. We will find you.
That's what I think is intimidating. But I don't know about the laws in Australia, so it's hard for me to say. But yeah, I think that's one of the things that would probably need to be discussed is even in the future. In the future, when there's discussions with HQs and IMDs and stuff like that too, is in the end, your country needs to protect its own and know all the information of is this illegal? Is this something we're capable, we should be doing or not, right? But for me is the thing that made it a little bit better for me is, okay, it was discussed. Strategy. It was with the higher ups, with IMD. All these people came together. They sat down, just decided that this was the best way to do it. And they agreed upon it together, right? So it was discussed. It wasn't just this one person going off and just really angry and saying, oh, I'm going to find you. I'm going to get you. It wasn't like that, right? It was agreed upon. Was it the right thing? Personally, I don't think it was the right way to do it. But it was discussed and agreed upon, and then they're going to have to, be responsible and accountable to their actions of what they've done according to what Australian laws, and I don't know what that is, right? So I don't know, but it's something that I did look at, and I wanted to understand it better first before saying, ooh, why'd you do this? Or like, oh, I can't believe they did that. It'd be like, oh, now I understand why it happened this way, right? So I think they're going to probably be dealing with this. I'm not sure if it'll get legally, because in the spotlight in the video, they are like talking to the charity, the government about, is this, they should take a look into this organization, this, and this. But the one thing that I found, I'll tell you this one thing. The one thing that was the most ridiculous thing that I ever heard was the accusation from Channel 7 News saying that we're sex trafficking. Like, once I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, so they're just going for clickbait. They're just trying to rile everyone up, because all of us know, like sex trafficking is huge. That is a huge accusation. And I know in America and Canada, in order for you to be convicted of that, like, the burden of proof is very high. Like, very, very high. So for me, I'm just like, wow, they're just really going for the stars. Like, they're shooting for something that they're never going to hit. So when I looked at that, I was like, wow, okay. I don't know about Australia, but I know in like America and stuff, the burden of proof for sex trafficking is huge. It is big, right? And it's something that burden of proof for sex trafficking is so high that, a lot of people may not even be convicted, even if they are false. Like, even if they did it, right? So that's something that I looked at. I was like, wow, that was like reaching really, really high. So that's why even for me, even more at this time, the credibility of it was really low. And it's probably going to stir up some stuff with the government too, my feeling is. But when they get down to the details, I don't really think anything is going to stick, to be honest. This is just my opinion. This is my opinion. I'm not a lawyer. I just watch a lot of lawyer shows like Suits and these ridiculous shows like Perry Mason when I was younger and stuff like that also. But yeah, there's a high burden of proof to get to that level. So if anything, guys, I think we really, really need to pray for Australia and just make sure, if you know anyone there, just give them your encouragement, pray for them so that everyone can really be in the right frame of mind and that everyone can overcome this as best as possible. Like I said, the news cycle is 7 news cycles usually for every major news, which means we're already past like 7 to 10 days. I do believe there was like a new 8-minute episode that did come out about Pastor John, but if anything, that would probably end next Sunday too. Like, it's a 7 news cycle for big news. And it's just going to pass on. So let's just hope that things move on, that the public there's no huge outcry about this also. But most importantly, let's just pray for the churches, pray for all the members and the leaders that are involved with this so that all the things can be taken care of properly. Okay? So there it is, guys. That is Provi in the Media for today. Hope you guys really enjoyed that. And I hope it's something that you guys will be able to gain a lot from too. All right? So that's the end of today's Thursday podcast. Everyone have an amazing and awesome day, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly, so let's realign. Just listen and fill your mind.